Donald Trump, looking to mount a political comeback, is considering launching a third attempt at the U.S. presidency, and it could come soon. That's according to 3 of his advisors who spoke to Reuters, saying the announcement could come before Thanksgiving, as Trump looks to benefit from expected Republican wins in Tuesday's midterm elections. An announcement in the coming weeks could also box out potential rivals for the party's nomination, the advisors said, though they added it was possible the former president could still delay a decision or change his mind. Another source said Trump has been sounding out potential staff to join his team. A representative for Trump did not respond to a request for comment. Nonpartisan election forecasters and polls say it is highly likely Republicans will win a majority in the U.S. House of Representatives and also have a good shot of taking control of the Senate, which would give them the power to block President Joe Biden's legislative agenda for the next 2 years. But after a divisive 4-year term that ended in an assault on the U.S. Capitol by Trump supporters, then 2 years of his baseless claims that his defeat was the result of fraud, and numerous court battles, Trump remains unpopular with the general public. A poll last month showed that just 41% of Americans view him favorably, though he still has the overwhelming support of Republicans.
I ran twice, and now, in order to make our country successful, safe, and glorious again, I will probably have to do it again.
This Washington state facility is buzzing with election workers processing ballots, with just a few days to go until the midterm elections. As concerns run high about misinformation and disinformation regarding election integrity and growing fears of political violence, King County Election Director Julie Wise says this race is different than any other she's seen in more than 2 decades of work.
And I've never, ever seen a climate like the one we currently are in, where some could argue that there's a war on democracy or elections itself, especially on vote by mail for the last couple of years.
Voter fraud is extremely rare, but a Reuters Ipsos poll from earlier this week found that nearly half of Americans believe it's a widespread problem. So Wise and her crew are operating here with what she calls radical transparency. There are more than 50 cameras at the facility, and people can watch a dozen online. Election materials are kept for at least 22 months. There's also a record number of political party observers getting training on how the process works. Wise said it's key to make sure people know there is bipartisan observation at every step and that voting by mail is safe.
Because when they're here, they also get all of their questions answered. I'd say vote by mail is the most secure, accurate, and accessible election system that we have in this country.
You know, American democracy is under attack.
But federal and local officials are worried. In a speech on Wednesday, President Joe Biden said when politicians cast doubt on elections, democracy itself is at risk.
This intimidation, this violence against Democrats, Republicans, and nonpartisan officials just doing their jobs are the consequence of lies told for power and profit. We have to confront those lies with the truth. The very future of our nation depends on it.
Back at the processing center outside Seattle, Wise is confident her team is up to the task and able to safely and securely handle over 1 million mail-in and drop-box ballots.
We use experts that did security in casinos so that we're keeping our ballots just as secure as money.
In what would be a major defeat for Russia in its war against Ukraine, officials are now saying that Ukrainian forces are capable of retaking the strategic southern city of Kherson from Russian troops. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin at the Pentagon on Thursday.
Most importantly, the Ukrainians believe that they have the capability to do that. We've seen them engage in a very methodical but effective effort to take back their sovereign territory.
Austin's remarks coincided with a Russian-installed official in the Kherson region saying that Moscow was likely to pull its troops from the west bank of the Dnipro River, which, if confirmed, would signal a significant retreat for Moscow. The region's capital and river port is the only big city Russia has captured intact since its invasion began in late February. But Ukraine said it was still fighting in the area and was wary that Russian forces were setting a trap by pretending to pull out. Previously, Russia had vehemently denied it was planning to withdraw from the region, which President Vladimir Putin claimed to have annexed to Russia at the end of September. Meanwhile, in the northeastern city of Kharkiv, Ukrainian servicemen fired rockets at multiple Russian positions. Kharkiv in recent days has been hit by Russian missile and drone strikes, targeting infrastructure and causing blackouts. And in the capital of Kyiv, 2 U.S. senators, Democrat Chris Coons and Republican Rob Portman, vowed that bipartisan support from the U.S. would continue for Ukraine after next week's midterm elections.
The United States has long been a nation that fights for freedom, and this is the most important fight for freedom in the world today.
The visit comes amid speculation that the Republicans, seen as favorites to take control of at least the House of Representatives, could dampen U.S. support for Ukraine, something Portman appeared to refute.
Clearly, what's going on here in Ukraine is something that Republicans ought to focus on because it's in our national security interest. Think of the consequences if Vladimir Putin is allowed to succeed.
As election campaigning intensifies in the state of Nevada, there's one group that could prove crucial in this year's midterms battle: unregistered voters. Many in this group are Latino and Asian American and Pacific Islander, also known as AAPI, fast-growing communities in a critical swing state, with tight election races for the House, U.S. Senate, and governor. So both parties are pounding the pavement and knocking on doors.
We encourage all Latino can go to vote.
Miriam Cervantes and MC Balicanta are 2 Democrat-supporting canvassers.
Here I am, personally, I'm knocking doors at every neighborhood.
Republicans are also canvassing, and in Nevada they have another tool: Hispanic outreach centers, small community hubs where campaigners invite prospective voters in to talk to them about their concerns.
Right now, at the moment, there's about 100,000 Hispanics, Latinos, that are not registered to vote. They are eligible to vote, but they're not registered yet. So there's a big number of people that we can reach out, and the opportunities are tremendous right now.
The AAPI community is the fastest growing electoral group in the state according to the 2020 census, making up about 12% of residents. But that's still way behind the Latino vote, which accounted for nearly 20% of eligible voters in Nevada 2 years ago, and experts say is still expanding. David Damore is a professor of political science at UNLV.
The older white voters are dying out and they're being replaced by minority voters, so the parties that are able to respond to the changing demography are well positioned in Nevada. The Latino electorate's growing, and as it's growing, you're seeing more issues emerge beyond immigration there. Certainly the Latino community was hard hit during the COVID and during the lockdown. Education issues loom large here. You're also seeing the emergence of a stronger gender gap, with Latino males more likely to vote Republican, Latinas more likely to vote Democratic.
For many Latinos, there is one overriding issue: the economy.
Every time we go to the grocery store, every time we go to the gas station right now, what's happening with the economy? And all these super high prices are affecting directly our family. And that's where the Latinos, I think, are starting to see, and they are starting to wake up.
Iris Ramos-Jones has been a citizen of the U.S. since 2019 and moved to the U.S. from Ecuador a decade ago.
Watching the news, watching on TV ads that they are running based on abortion, it's just, I'm so unfamiliar with that. And I think that might be an issue that the Democratic Party is getting wrong, especially with the Latino community.
But the Democrats are trying. The Culinary Workers Union is putting all of its efforts into reaching those who might still be persuaded to vote blue, says Secretary-Treasurer Ted Papa George.
We're knocking on 1 million doors this time around in the state of Nevada. By the end of this, by election day, we will have knocked on over half of the Latino voters in the state, over half of the black voter doors in the state, and over 1/3 of Asian American doors in the state. If we knock on those 1 million doors and talk to those voters, we're going to win.
U.S. stocks closed lower for a fourth straight session on Thursday as economic data did little to alter expectations the Federal Reserve would continue raising interest rates for longer than previously thought, after Fed Chair Jerome Powell said Wednesday that it was premature to consider a pause. The Dow fell less than 0.5%, the S&P 500 dropped a full percent, while the Nasdaq lost about 1.75%. Weekly unemployment claims unexpectedly fell, suggesting the U.S. labor market was still strong, but investors will pay closer attention to the October jobs report due on Friday and watch for any signs the Fed's rate hikes are beginning to have an impact. Liz Miller, president of Summit Place Financial Advisors, said they may still have to wait.
The jobs reports have become so unpredictable. The expectation is for 200,000 new jobs, and I'm just reporting a meaningless consensus as we've seen month after month. Back to Federal Reserve Chairman Powell, the Fed is focused on trying to weaken the jobs market, but I think the jobs market is being driven by so much more than just this idea of demand inflation that it's difficult to look at that. And of course, we know all of this takes place with a delay. And what I mean by that is we've been through now, months of incredible increases in interest rates, and you really need to give it, 3 more months till you see some of those big hikes from this summer play through the economy. We've certainly heard during earnings season this fall a number of companies talking about expected layoffs, expected cutbacks, but we won't see those in the numbers now probably for another month or 2 months. So I think that the timing is difficult, and I think tomorrow has the potential to be as surprising as the most recent reports we've had on jobs.
Mega-cap growth companies including Apple and Alphabet pulled down tech and telecom stocks, the worst performing sectors of Thursday's session. Qualcomm and Roku also lost ground after their holiday quarter outlooks fell below Wall Street expectations. Losses were curbed on the Dow, though, thanks to gains in industrials including Boeing and heavy equipment maker Caterpillar.